This is Chidwick for octopipoker.ai, and today I'm going to be talking about what I think are the most common misconceptions about GTO poker. I hear all the time that people think playing GTO or learning to play in a GTO style is all about memory. It's about combing through lots of charts, remembering what to do in all these different situations so that when the situation occurs in game, you can just remember what you learned and kind of copy that strategy. I think this is a huge misconception. First of all, it's completely impossible. If you think about even one hand of poker on a single board, all the different hands you could have in just one position pair, like button against the big blind, there's every single node that you can arrive at. So, I could bet small, I could bet big, I could check. You could check raise small, you could check raise big. Every single one of those situations is a new node in the tree. And for every one of those nodes, I would need to remember every strategy for every combo that I can have, hundreds of different combos. And then you multiply that by every position pair, you multiply that by every stack depth, and you multiply that by different stages of the tournament, different ICM pressures, etc. Even if you could perfectly remember everything you've ever seen, you would spend your whole life trying to click through every node to just to be able to apply this to a poker hand. So instead of doing that, what I find to be beneficial about studying GTO is learning principles, trying to find the patterns in the data that advance my understanding of poker on a theoretical level. And those kind of general broad principles or heuristics can be applied to a new situation. I think that's one of the coolest things to me about poker is, when a solver solves a poker hand, it does it by playing billions and billions and billions of hands against itself, trying different things, and eventually converges on an equilibrium where both players know what each other are doing, but if they did anything else, then it would be a worse strategy. And as humans playing poker, we have to sit there and in 5, 10, 30 seconds come up with a strategy on the fly, one iteration, just using our brain, and kind of that's the strategy we play. And as advanced as solvers are, they still miss a ton of info. They don't know anything about the psychology of poker. They don't know anything about play styles of opponents or any physical information. Our brains are taking all of that into account, ideally combining it with our theoretical knowledge and coming up with a novel solution to a given hand. And I just find that to be super fun, and I find the GTO or the theoretical knowledge of poker to be only adding to the complexity and the fun of what I loved about poker in the first place, which is kind of solving problems and just figuring everything out as you go along. My second biggest misconception that I hear a lot is that GTO poker is boring poker. I think this is just completely false. I think, first off, no one's playing GTO poker. I think a lot of the people who are perceived as playing GTO or closer to game theory optimal are actually not. They're not putting in nearly as much money as the solver puts in. If you're playing the trainer against George, you will find yourself constantly in like super tough spots that most humans aren't going to put you in. Overbets and really creative plays. I've learned a lot of novel and creative lines from looking at solver outputs. For example, what we call a demi bluff, which is where you bet a hand, maybe you have bottom pair, and you can make a bet where your opponent's going to fold middle pair, but call with some ace high flush draws, for example, and then you can check back the river, and was your bet a bluff or a value bet? It was both. And I think before I started looking at solver outputs, that wasn't even a possibility in my mind that a bet could be both a value bet and a bluff. So yeah, I think that solver poker is fun to watch, fun to play, and not boring at all. The third common misconception that I hear from a lot of people is that GTO doesn't apply to the games they play. No one plays like that, so why bother looking at the strategies? There's nothing for me there. Firstly, looking at situations and finding spots that people are playing differently is the first step to being able to exploit them. If you don't know that your opponent's play is a mistake, then you won't be able to respond to it in the best way. The principles that you learn can be applied to a lot of different situations. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, we're taking much more information into account than the solver says. We've got kind of recent history. We've got all kinds of other pieces of information that we want to apply to any given situation. We don't want to just abstract it to only the things that the solver knows about. But the principles that we learn from the solver can be used with whatever ranges we think are actually in play. To illustrate how you might do that, I pulled up a spot here. It's Ace King 7, low jack against the big blind, single raise pot. So big blind checks its whole range. I think everyone's pretty familiar with this being a bad flop for the big blind. Good flop for the low jack. So you can see here that the solver really likes a bigger sized c-bet and checks quite a bit on the flop. A lot of people play this spot I see as just a pure range c-bet for a small size. So you might think, what can I learn from this? Knowing that this is the way that kind of captures the most EV theoretically, is going to allow you to play the hand with more knowledge and know that you can be exploiting them. So you'll see the hands that really want to check here, the under pairs to the pocket pairs under the king. They're going to have these hands too frequently, allowing you to do things like kind of check call the flop and target these hands very effectively with a bluff later in the hand. And another thing is that sooner or later you're going to play against players who have seen strategies like this, who do implement this kind of strategy, and it's good to know how to play against those guys when you do face them. So you can see the preferred c-bet size is a bigger size. We check call this range. We have a little bit of raising, but not too much. On the turn 3 of clubs, now you can see we lead a bunch. Almost half of our range is leading. Reason for that is that you can see we have 18% flushes. The ace and the king block a whole lot of the hands that they can, a whole lot of their suited combos that they open from the low jack. So even though our EV or our equity, overall equity of our whole range might not be as high, we can still carve out some bets for those flushes. We see actually we do have quite a high equity advantage also here. A lot of people are going to say, okay, people don't lead in the games that I play. Like they're gonna just automatically check everything that comes on the turn, well, that's great. So you've c-bet the flop, they've check called. Now the turn hits and you know they have 3 times as many flushes as you do. They check. We have 6% flushes, they have 18. This is our strategy if our opponent has led half of his range into us with his superior flush advantage. So now we know that against a human who's not leading, his range is going to be much stronger than his range after he checks is going to be much stronger than this suggests. So we're going to want to be way more passive than this, betting the turn. And some of these thinner value bets, the ace jacks, the ace tens, we might just want to pure check those hands. And we might want to just be very unbalanced towards value when we bet the turn. And that would be a good takeaway from looking at the sim, even though our opponent isn't playing in a GTO way. So I hope that looking through different boards, different strategies, you learn some things that you can apply to your game. And I hope if you had any of these misconceptions, that you no longer have them, and enjoy learning with octopipoker.ai. This has been Stephen Chidwick. See you next time.